everyone. Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be here with another client interview for you guys. Today, I'm really excited to have Rohan on with us, excuse me, because Rohan is a student that we've been working with, since it's probably been like 5 or 6 months, right? Since November
Yeah.
or December of 2022. And he just finished going through the summer 2024 recruiting process, which was uh, I guess I'll let him tell you himself, but I would say probably kind of a roller coaster
I know.
experience for him. And but fortunately, he's come out the other side now with multiple offers in hand, and he's accepted the one that he's really really happy with. And so I wanted to get him on here to talk to you guys about how he was able to do that, and then hopefully along the way also shed some insight that you will find beneficial for your own process as well. So Rohan, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you don't mind, just introducing yourself real quick so that our audience can kind of get a feel for who you are and kind of what your profile is.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Sam. So a little bit about me. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. And made the switch to Drexel, moved all the way to Philly because of the co-op program.
Mm,
I just learned always best with hands-on experiences, and I thought this program was a no-brainer for me, which is why I chose Drexel. And then, my freshman year, I had no idea what I wanted to do, like a lot of other kids. So, that freshman year summer, I went back home and worked at a local homeowners insurance company called HCI Group, worked as an accounting intern.
mm,
And, during my time there, I was actually exposed to an IPO process. So one of the subsidiary companies for HCI Group was going through an IPO process, and seeing how, a lot of these middle market investment banks were involved with that process, drew me to the field. So from
mm,
that point onward, how do I get into banking? So as I mentioned, I was part of the co-op programs. My first co-op, I was in JP Morgan working in operations, back office role. Um, you know, I thought it was all right. Really enjoyed the team there, but I wanted something a little bit more fast paced and something, more client facing. That was the next stepping stone on how to get into banking. So that summer, so what was it, July 2022, I accepted my second co-op at Goldman Sachs in
mm.
private wealth management in LA. It was a one step closer to my goal to banking, but not exactly where I wanted to be. So, from that point onward, I was just casually studying the guides, just like a lot of other kids trying to memorize everything, had no concept of, what even levered beta was, just memorized the formula and, went back and forth like that. And then, through trial and error, trying to get an investment banking co-op, I just write down the questions I didn't know and try to memorize the answer to that. I just wasn't, a productive way of studying. So then I went to Goldman, and then 2 months into the role, I tried to ramp it up. Nothing was working. And that's when, I came across Sam's program. Speaking to a lot of kids from Drexel, they spoke highly of it. I was super skeptical at first. See all the ads on Instagram and whatnot. I was like, is this even real? 90% success rate. So I just, said, whatever, invest in my future. Some investments work out, some don't. And obviously I'm glad this one did. So, spoke with Sam, spoke with the team, and they got me on board. It was just a
Yeah,
tough journey, working 6 months, around 60, 80 hours and still doing the banking and recruiting cycle for a summer 2024 internship. But,
yeah.
um, just Sam and his team have been a huge help and, helping me understand, some of the material. So, yeah,
Are you saying you were working 60 hours and having to recruit on top of that, or you're saying like
yeah,
you're spending 60 hours a week on recruiting?
no, no, no. I was working around 60 to 80 hours. That was
60 to
because,
80 hours.
yeah, I
Okay.
was in LA, so we're working on East Coast time, right? Because the market hours.
Hmm.
And then, a lot of, client related tasks had to be done after hours as well. So on top of that, coming home at maybe, let's say 8 p.m., after being in the office since 6 a.m. and still putting in the work, you know, to like midnight and repeating that whole cycle was pretty devastating. But, you know, really having, Johnny and yourself, have my back. So,
Wow.
it was great in that sense. Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds like you're ready for the hours in banking. I'll say that.
I know,
um,
I know.
but dude, that's amazing because I mean, sometimes I hear students say like, "Oh, like I don't have enough time to recruit or whatever," or like I'm too busy, or I don't have time to do this program. And I'm like, first of all, the whole point of doing this program is to make it so that you don't have to spend as much time as you would have otherwise.
Yeah.
It was meant to save you time, but like But really, that's not even the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is like, then I hear from students like you and a lot of other students in program who are like just working so hard, right? It's like 60, 80-hour work weeks and recruiting on top of that. And I think that's the first thing that I want to call out is like the difference between people who end up being successful and people who are not, and the people who like win in life and people who don't. A lot of times it comes down to like just your mentality and your work ethic, right? It's like
Yeah.
I guarantee you a lot of people that tell me that they're too busy to like recruit the right way or whatever, it's like they're probably not even working as much as you are.
I
so
know, I know. Yeah.
so so anyway, that's just like to put things in perspective, right? But so let's start here. Like what I already alluded to this earlier, but like, obviously you were able to get multiple offers by the end of this process. Can we tell people first, like, what were the offers that you got?
Sure. Yes, I got an offer from Union Square Advisors. I got it from Baird, and then going from Harris Williams. And then I interviewed for Baird and Union Square Advisors long before Harris Williams. It just took a while for the offer to actually, reach my line. But really clicked well with the Harris Williams team, their tech M&A group, and really love the environment that they had. So I think really with the program you created allowed me to talk to so many different individuals and help me expand my network in that sense in the way I didn't even know I could, and have interviews with so many different firms and really get the feel of where I think I can stick it out for the long run and where I don't feel comfortable. So
Yeah,
I think I'm just happy with that decision. So
for sure. And like, I think a lot of people are sitting here and looking at you and saying, wow, he got three offers. That's amazing. Like, I'll be happy with just one offer. But at the same time, like me having been kind of behind the scenes and seeing your journey along the way, I know like I alluded to this earlier, it was quite the roller coaster for you. And I know like how much like pain and struggle you had to go through to get to this. Like I feel like people always only see like the end result, which is like, oh
yeah,
man, that guy got the offer, like he's so lucky or whatever, right? But it's like,
yeah,
how many firms did you end up interviewing with to get these three offers? Did you like keep track, or because I know you
yeah.
had a lot of interviews and you got to like the super day multiple times and you got super close multiple times, right?
I know. I think it was maybe like 12 firms ish,
Yeah,
and then I had maybe like 4 or 5 super days.
yeah,
So I think the biggest thing is never let your foot off the gas until you sign. I mean that's like I wish I knew that early on because
yeah,
you get on these calls with some of these MDs and VPs and you get so optimistic. I'm like, oh, they're gonna push for me, they're gonna push for me. But I think it's like you mentioned, just staying proactive and keep the foot on the gas until you actually get the offer because none of this is guaranteed.
for
There's so
sure.
many there's so many other kids probably talking to the same VP and MD that you are.
Yeah.
So it's like nothing's guaranteed in the future. That's what I wish I knew for sure.
And like honestly, like that's also why it's important to get as many interviews as you can, right? Like a lot of people
Yeah,
think like, oh, just get like one interview, two interviews, three, five interviews, and like I should be able to get a job. Was like sometimes not really, because like you think about
yeah,
each of these firms, most of their acceptance rates are like anywhere from like I would say 1 to 3%. Like this is a middle market bank, probably like 3%. There's no more than 5%
mm,
for sure, right? And so
yeah,
like it's just hard. Like if you only had like one or two or even three interviews, like statistically speaking, like there's still a pretty high chance that you might not get any of them, right? And then so like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
to interview with 12 firms and land three offers, like three offers is awesome, but that's like there's a lot of heartache before that because you were getting rejected by like the other nine firms, right?
yeah,
And I'm sure we'll talk more about this later too, but it's just in terms of like, that whole process and the mindset while you were going through it. But before we go there, I want to ask you about you were kind of starting to talk about this a little bit earlier, but you joined November, December-ish of sophomore, I guess the sophomore year, right? I mean, you guys are on like a weird co-op system, but
yeah. I'm in a 5-year program, so it was my third year.
but
Right.
effectively for recruiting purposes, it's like,
So quote
yeah,
unquote
it's like
sophomore.
it's
Yeah.
like your sophomore year, right? So like about, yeah, it was like
Right.
right around Thanksgiving, so halfway through sophomore year. And then you were saying before that you had already, done a lot of like studying the interview guys, memorizing formulas and things like that. Like, talk to us a bit more about all the things you were already doing on your own prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind. Like, what did you do? How did you go about it? And like, how was that going for you?
Yeah. It was rough because I went into interview for an investment banking co-op, not even knowing what WAC was, thinking it would be just behavioral. So that was the toughest part. And what I was doing on my own was mainly just, like I mentioned, trying to memorize all the question and answer in all the guides, you know, and then just memorize all the easy ones, all the common ones that are going to be asked. Nowadays all these firms skip past that. They have a twist. Each of the firms have their own books with a twist of each question, different numbers, different verbiage. So as long as if you don't understand the questions, you're basically screwed, you know. And that's
Mm,
where I definitely would have found myself in that position if I was doing it on my own. You know,
mm,
I would memorize, all right, unlevered beta, levered beta. Wouldn't even know why we unlevered or relevered, right? Like that's like the key thing that can help you out with so many other problems. Just
right.
understanding things like that can carry it on. So I think especially now, it's not 2015 when these guys were created, right? All these firms know what all these kids are doing. And if everybody could memorize it, then everybody would be in banking, right?
Mm,
So it's more about understanding the concept and you really put in the work to get there. So
yeah. So that's interesting. So basically, you were doing, it sounds like you were doing what everyone for the most part is already doing, which is
yeah.
you have the popular guides, whether it's like Breaking the Wall Street Guide, 400 Questions Guide, I don't know what else, Wall Street Oasis Guide, Wall Street Prep Guide. There's probably like 3 or 4 guides that
Hmm.
everybody's reading. You just get like the hand me downs from your upperclassmen is like, this is what we
Yeah.
did, read this. And then like,
Yeah.
that's where you start, right? Um, but it kind of becomes a trap because like I think what happens is I'm not saying that you can't just study the guys and get jobs. I do think that there are some people that just use the guys and then they get jobs, but I think that people get tricked into thinking like, oh well, yeah, like these people that I know all did it that way, and then so that must be like the best way. But like the people that are doing it that way, they're also not just memorizing. And then like I think a lot of people miss that distinction. And then so they're not like actually learning the concepts and they're just like memorizing answers to the 400 questions, right? And it's like if you really want to memorize answers to questions, the bad news is that there are an infinite number of questions that they could possibly
Yeah, I
ask.
know.
And
I
so
know.
you will never be done, right? Versus
Yeah.
if you're actually trying to learn the concepts, there's a finite amount of concepts that they actually test on. Like that's the
Yeah.
biggest difference, right? And so like
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the true test for um whether you're actually ready or not, I tell everyone is like you gotta see if you're actually capable of teaching these concepts to someone else.
Yeah.
If you're able to teach these concepts to someone else, like I don't know, your younger brother who knows nothing about finance, your parents who know nothing about finance, that's how you know that you actually understand the concepts.
Yeah.
And at that point, then it doesn't matter what questions they ask you. If they test you on that concept, you're going to be able to adapt on the fly, right? But if you can't teach them, if you can't explain these concepts in an easy to understand way for someone who's like, not a finance expert, then like you probably don't know it well enough, right? That's the
Yeah.
sign of like expertise is when you can distill a concept down into like very simple and easy to understand way, right?
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think like the guys just don't do a good job of teaching you how to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but okay, so that's what you were doing, and then like that on top of co-ops, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
then you join Wall Street Mastermind, right? And then you were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier too, but like I guess what made you want to join? Was it just because you heard about it from your friends on campus, or and obviously the other thing too is like, and just like a lot of other students that have joined Wall Street Management over the year, like you said, like you were very skeptical at first, right? Because almost like oh, the success rate sounds too good to be true or whatever. And just in general, I think when you see something on the internet, like a healthy dose of skepticism is a good thing, right? But like, how did you ultimately overcome that skepticism? And like, you know what? Okay, yeah, like this is something that I want to do, because I feel like a lot of people get stuck at that point where they're like, oh yeah, this is too good to be true, or oh, I'm kind of skeptical, like I'm scared, I'm just not going to do it, right? And so, like, can you kind of walk through kind of your decision making process?
Hmm. Yeah, first, like I mentioned, scrolling through Instagram, saw your ad, then did my own research, looked through all your free modules that you have out there, your story, and I was like, if you can get, do this in the '08, crisis, right, the great financial crisis, I'm like, I mean, I want to learn from you, right? So did some more research, and then I started talking to a few folks on campus who went through your program, and then they were telling me that I thought it was initially just either you or someone else that were helping me out. I'm like, how are you helping out thousands of students, right? But it's a whole team behind you, and I
Mm,
think that's something that you don't get anywhere else. Analysts will say that they'll help you out, right? You get in a nice connection call with them, and you feel really good. Oh, I'm going to get the offer, get the interview, right? But they have so many other things to worry about. They're probably going to PE recruitment. They're worried about their own job, So really having a team there to just help you get the offer was something that drew me, to
mm,
the course. So
gotcha.
yeah,
How did you even know these other students on campus were in a program? Like, they just tell you, or you just like you already
yeah.
knew them, or?
No, I asked them what did they do to prep, and
Hmm.
then they told me, and then I saw, one of these videos on YouTube. Like, hey, he's the president of my finance club, So yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah,
yeah,
no, we actually worked with, gosh, I've lost count, but it's got to be almost 10 Drexel students at this point. And
yeah,
I think every single one of them has gotten an offer so far. So like, we love working with Drexel students because it's just like, it's I don't know, you guys just do a very good job of getting the job done. So
yeah.
something about the co-op program probably, um but that's interesting. So to your point, like, I think, like, yes, obviously you should ask for help from anyone you can get help from. Like, we definitely don't sit here and say like, hey, don't get help from people that are already working in banking or analysts or even the
Hmm.
clubs at your school. Like, a lot of our own students, like you said, are like the presidents of these clubs at school, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like, I think the biggest difference between our team and most of the help that you can get anywhere else is just that, like, it's actually our job to help you. Whereas,
Hmm.
like, for other people, if they help you, they're just doing it out of like the niceness of their hearts. But like, that sounds nice, but there's a difference in terms of like the level of commitment you're gonna get from someone who's just helping you to be nice, right? It's like
Right.
even your upperclassmen or whoever, like, yeah, they want you to do well and they hope you get a job, but to be honest, like, they just went through recruiting themselves, and like the last thing they want to do is like go through recruiting again, right? So
No,
like,
yeah, yeah,
they might spend, in my experience, just like, and just talking to a lot of students in our programs, like, a lot of the help that you get elsewhere, it's very surface level, right? It's like you might be able to, if you're lucky, you might be able to get someone to give you 30 minutes at a time and just have a quick conversation
sure.
with
Yeah.
you, have a coffee chat, and they don't really know that much about your situation. There's only so much you can talk about in 30 minutes. They don't have the full context, and how much feedback can they actually give you in that short amount of time, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
so versus like, I mean, you've been working with us since, late November, so really it's been almost half a year. And
I
think
know.
about how much, and I guess this is a good segue into the my next question I was going to ask, but I was going to say, like, think about like how much interaction we had during the last 6 months or so, and like, imagine if it wasn't us and it was just like your friend or something, and you had to
Yeah,
bug them. Not that you were bugging
yeah.
us, but like, if you had to ask them as many questions as you asked us, like, it'll probably ruin your friendship, right?
Yeah. I know. Yeah,
um, so like, I think that's the difference. Is like, I think these things are not mutually exclusive. You should get help from anywhere you can.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, I think, like, for everyone out there, it's like the best thing to do is like at least have that one source of help that is dependable and consistent, and you can rely on it 24/7
Yeah.
anytime you need, because recruiting is always happening. Like it's always on, like it doesn't stop, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
stop. Like there's no, you don't, you can't take a break. There's no pauses, at least not until you get the offer. And so like, you just never know when you're going to need help. Like things keep coming up all
Hmm.
the time. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean that I think you put it perfectly. I was close to an analyst, I would text him all the time. He would prep me here and there. I was close to another student at IU Kelly who already got his offer. But they have so many other things to do. While you guys are devoted to helping students like myself, right? So that is the main differentiator.
I mean, also like for the analysts, like, okay, there's this firm that's paying them 6 figures a year to do work,
Yeah.
and there's you who's just asking for free help. And if the managing director is like breathing down his back, like,
Right. Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
where's my pitch deck? And then Rohan's like, hey man, can you help me with this? And like, I mean, what do you think is the higher priority, right? Like, so
Right. Yeah. I know. I know. I know.
like to you, recruiting is like your number one priority, but to them,
Yeah.
it's very, very low on their all the long list of things that they have to do. And so there's a mismatch there, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, did you have to like convince your parents to let you join this program? Like, and if so, like, how was that conversation, or like, was that difficult to navigate? Because like a lot of students, um, kind of struggle with that. Like they want to do the program, and their parents don't understand what this program is, or they're like, I don't understand why you need help like getting a job. Like I got my job on my own. Like, did you experience any of that, or not really?
Yeah. I mean, they knew I wanted to do banking for a long time, and I think them willing to support me really helped me also get the offer. That was like a different drive, that sparked me. I'm like, all right, I have literally all the resources in the world now. What is stopping me from achieving the best that I can do, right?
Mm.
So I think that was also a huge fire, and glad they're very supportive of it. So yeah, it wasn't.
So they were actually just like super supportive from the get go. Like it wasn't like a tough conversation. It was like they knew how bad you wanted this, and
Yeah.
when you
Yeah,
asked
I,
them,
ex I explained to them, I'm like, nothing is clicking. Like, I mean, I'm reading all these guides that, like, one of my cousins sent me who works in banking now. And then I was like, I don't know, how the hell do people do this? I was like, I can't do it. I just simply don't understand. So I was
mm,
like, I needed to understand the material. I mean, I needed someone to teach it to me, as what your modules did, right?
yeah,
Rather than just reading it off of a PDF. So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so funny because I'm so glad to hear that your parents are like the super support type. I mean, there are also parents out there who are like, will tell their like students come back and tell us all the times like, sorry, I really, really want to do this program, but my dad said like, if I can't get this job on my own, then I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
It's like that type of like very, very like old school mentality, and it's just like, honestly, we're not trying to do anything crazy. It's just like, when you go to college, like, I guess there's two ways you could learn. You could just like buy a textbook and sit
Yeah,
at
it's a
home
it's a
and
course. It's literally, yeah, it's
yeah,
a
you can
class.
like
You're
buy a
buying a
textbook
class.
and self study, or you can like go to class and learn from a professor and learn from your
Yeah,
TAs. And then, like, we don't tell people like, oh, you have to go to class and learn from a professor. Well, then you're a
yeah.
freaking loser. Like that makes no
I
sense, right?
I think it's great that you mentioned that because a lot of these, target schools, they have structured programs where there's a team already at that school devoted to help these kids get into banking, right? That's the whole thing. That's the whole point of the club,
Right.
right? My school, for example, we don't have that. A lot of other schools don't have that. So I think, that's really also why.
Yeah.
And then also for those target schools that do have that program, not everybody's going to be able to get in, right? So it's
Yeah.
even harder in that sense. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And like at the end of the day, you're not recruiting in a silo. It's not like you're the only one going for these jobs. You're competing against other students at Drexel, sure, but you're also competing against like the students at Wharton across the street, right? Like, and
right. I
it's
know
like they have so much more in terms of resources and alumni
exactly.
network and all these things that you just don't have. And you just have to find a way to like level the playing field at least a little bit, right?
Sure.
Um, so let's talk about like after you join, right? Like what what do you feel like were kind of like the most impactful things for you that you did inside the program? Like what were like kind of the because people always wonder like, what's the difference between this versus if I just do it on my own, right? It's hard for people to kind of visualize that, but like now that you've gone through on the other side, like, are there like two or three things that you say like really, really made the biggest difference for you?
Yeah. I'm not going to say the modules because we already talked about that, and those are super impactful. I think if you put in the work in those modules, like you mentioned in one of those modules, there's kids who didn't even ask you a single question got the offer because they actually applied themselves. But for me, I think it was one, the network that I gained from the Slack channel. In terms of timeline, I would have never gotten a sense of what apps are closing, what apps are open. You guys have that built in as well, where you could see all the apps that are open, you see all the apps that are closing. There's always students talking about recruiting cycles, interview questions database, all the past interview questions for whatever firm. I
Yeah.
think that was super helpful in terms of prep. You have questions that, nobody's seen before and you could prep that. And um, the hot seat's a big one. You have 20 people, in the room, and for someone like me who's often a mental thing, I get nervous in interviews. I'll get grilled by one of the coaches, and then 20 other students are watching me, right? So of course I'm going to perform better in the interview when it's just one-on-one.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, don't be afraid to mess up in situations like that because it'll pay off when you actually have to perform, right? So those are a
Yeah.
few things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, on the hot seat thing, it's like, we haven't seen anyone else do this, but the reason why we do the hot seats is a couple of reasons. One, like, we really believe that you guys can all not just learn from you doing your own mock interviews, but also can learn from observing other people's mock interviews. Like, how many times have you watched other people's mock interviews and probably picked up something along the way? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I really like the way he answered that. Like, that
Yeah.
gives me some inspiration for maybe how I can change my own answers. But also to help you calibrate how you really stack up against the field.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of people, they just prep for these interviews and they know what they're going to say, but they don't truly know like if their answers stand out or if their answers
Hmm.
actually like are better than their competition's answers. So then at that point, you don't have that certainty and you go into these interviews, you're just like, man, fingers crossed, here we go. Like, hope this works out. And like, you're just not gonna come across the same way without that level of certainty, right?
Sure. Right.
And then I think also like you bring up a really good point, which is like it's almost impossible to simulate like the high pressure environment of a real interview. You just can't do
Right.
that through a mock because it's a mock, right?
I know. I
And
know.
then so like it's not the same. Like a lot of people like they do all these mocks and then they get into the real thing and then they start like getting sweaty palms and like
Yeah.
they're nervous and then they don't perform up to the level that they should have
Yeah.
performed at. But like one thing we can do to make it seem closer or sometimes even exceed the amount of pressure you feel in a real interview is by having an audience, right? To your point.
Yeah.
And I think like on that note too is like obviously look, if the audience is like super judgmental and toxic or whatever, that would suck. But like the good thing about everyone Welsh Smashman is like everyone's like actually very collaborative and there's no like it's a very safe environment, right? And so like a lot of times, like I mean, I was on a mock last week with one of our students named Kyle, and his
Hmm.
struggle is he's like great on paper, target school, great GPA, great resume, relevant experience, and he's like just not getting offers. And so we're like, all right, let's do a mock and figure out what the hell is going on. And then like within the first like 5 minutes, it was very apparent. It was like all in his delivery and his tonality, and he just sounded very awkward in the way he was speaking. And
Hmm.
um, and then like everyone that's like just observing started like chiming in and giving him advice and feedback on like, you know,
Yeah.
what specifically was wrong with his delivery and how he can work on it better. And like to be able to hear that from not just me, the coach, but also like the entire group of 9 or 10 people there and have
Hmm.
multiple data points of people saying like confirming like, yeah, this sounds off. Like like that tells you like everything you need to know. And then now he can go
Yeah.
back and work on those things. Right.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think like I really think it was like I mean that's the thing I love about this community is like I think it's like really like a team effort. Like I kind of view us all as like we're all on the same
Yeah.
team and we're all trying to like get everyone offers. And that's why like to your point, like people share questions, people share intel about like where these firms are at, and like the interview questions database where like people submit their questions, but they got an interview right after the interview, and it's like it's just helping everyone else, and everybody's winning together, and there's no like scarcity mindset of like, honestly, I don't know how it is at Drexel, but like a lot of the target school students that we work with, like kids from Wharton or Columbia or NYU, certain, they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, the kids at school are super cutthroat and they won't share any information because they don't
Hmm.
want to help you get a job, because then that's one less job for you,
Yeah. I
right?
know. I think
Um,
it's just pretty much the best way to sum it up is an army full of bankers at Wall Street Mastermind or future bankers, you know? So,
that is, I mean, honestly, that is kind of how I think Wall Street Mastermind is. Like, we're trying to
yeah.
build like a very large and growing community of young professionals who are all starting their careers at the top firms on Wall Street, and that becomes a very, very valuable professional network that you can always tap into, not just even now, but like going forward, because you're probably going to have a very long career in finance, and who knows what firm
Yeah.
you're going to be trying to interview with in the future. And then we probably
For
have an
sure.
alum
Yeah.
there, and they can talk to you, help you out, give you referrals, whatever. And like, that's invaluable, right?
Yeah. I think it was right when I joined, I witnessed something similar. Someone from the program went from Citizen to Jeffries, and someone was trying to get a full time at Jeffries, and you referred them to them. So, I mean, that's the very neat in that sense, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, it's it's like why a lot of people pay $200,000 a year to go to a top business school. They're
mm,
not doing that to go sit in a classroom and listen to lectures. They're doing that because they want to meet other, they want to build their professional network and meet other people that are also going to be HBS grads or GSB grads or Wharton grads. And
hmm,
those people become their friends for the rest of their career. And
right.
a lot of those people are going to go on, become CEOs, CFOs, like executives of different companies, and what managing directors. And it's like, that's very, very useful. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a similar idea, but I mean, we don't charge 200K for, so I guess that's the big difference. But regardless, I
Yeah.
guess just because we're running up on time here, but last piece of question for you. So what if you had to give like one piece of advice, like your best piece of advice, okay, it doesn't have to be one, but if you do, you have any advice that you want to pass
Yeah.
down to other students who are maybe still going through the recruiting process now, or maybe they're about to go through a recruiting process in the future? Was there like maybe advice that someone gave you that really made a big difference for you, or just something you figured out along the way on your own that you think, can really help other people? Is there anything like that that you want to share?
Yeah, a few things. Don't stop. You know, that's one thing. Do not stop until you get the offer. Don't let off the gas, no matter how close you are with the MD. The MD is your dad's friend. Just don't stop. Like I went from, my Harris Williams interview. I thought it was one of the best performances ever. And I was drafting emails to send to all my partners at Wells Fargo the next minute. You know, so it's like you have to have that drive. Nothing is guaranteed in this process. There's always going to be a kid that's better than you, and how are you going to top that kid, right? That's like how
Mhm.
you need to think about it, right? At the same time, I think, once you join the program, you have all the resources in the world to be successful. Every single person in this program either went to, you know, lower middle market, bulge bracket, every firm, you have it here, right? You have all the resources here. So at this point, it's just, now you have to put in the work, right? You don't put in the work, you're not going to get an offer.
Mhm.
If you just say, "Oh, Sam's going to help me out," Sam's modules taught me this, like that's not going to, you know, help you out in the long run, right? You can't be satisfied sending 30 emails a week when someone else is sending 40 a day, right? So I think that's like you have to keep going at it, just don't stop until you get it, no matter how hard it gets. So
And that is such a good point that you just made, like on the effort part, is like um we often hear people say like, oh yeah, I've been networking so much, like people outside, oh, I've been networking so much, but like I don't know why I'm not getting interviews. I'm like, oh, so how many interviews have you sent, or how many people have you tried to network with? It's like, I've sent out like 30 networking emails already, and they say that like very proudly, and it's like, okay, over like what period of time? It's like, I've been networking for like 6 months. I'm like,
oh
that's
my god,
like
yeah,
that's like five a month. Like, what are you
I
talking about?
know.
Right. And I'm
It's
like, people
because
do that in like less than a day. Like,
yeah, No, I
Um,
know. I mean, even after I had my Morgan interview, and then I felt so down about it. I'm like, maybe I mean, it's just might not get an interview, might settle for something very small boutique and work my way up. And then you grilled me basically on my mindset. You're like, why are you thinking like this? You basically, you had the shot to perform, now perform. And then it was something along those lines. And from that point onward, it was like, didn't let off the gas. I did not feel like my confidence went through the roof. So little things like that, I think, something that you got to
I
take
remember
away.
that
And
conversation. I remember that
yeah,
conversation actually.
yeah,
And I think that I'm glad you brought that up, which is like, honestly, recruiting is tough, right? That's
yeah,
why I said like, that's why I called it a roller coaster before. It's like, yeah, well, you're sitting here with 3 offers now, and people only see that, but it's like they didn't see all the rejections that you had before that. And
yeah,
I think a lot of times it's really easy, especially for college students who are going through this for the first time, have never done anything this hard before. I mean, let's be real, like that was probably the hardest thing that you've ever done in your life up to
for
this
sure,
point,
100%,
right?
100%. Yeah,
And like, and a lot of students too who are trying to like go into banking, like they've done well their whole life. Like they're high achievers. They've always gotten what they wanted for the most part. They got good grades in school. They got into the school they wanted to get into. Like they they for the most part have like never truly experienced rejection. And then so like they don't know how to handle it. And then
yeah,
like the first time they start being rejected, and not even just once, but like, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, 9 times, like it's very easy for that voice to like creep into your head and be like, hey, maybe I'm just not, maybe I'm just not good enough.
I know. Yeah,
Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'll just settle for something easier. That's why like me and Daniel and other coaches, like you should see Daniel sometimes. He's like, he gives people tough love, but it's like, we're just like, dude, what are you talking about? Just like,
yeah.
you're
Tough
this
love.
close. You're this
I know.
close. Right. But also that's from experience, because we've seen so many other people, like from your perspective, like this is the first time you're going through it and you have no other precedents. For us, we've seen all these other people that have gone through the exact same struggle that you're going through now. And then shortly after that, they got to where they wanted to go. And so,
Yeah,
that saying is like, you're 3 feet away from gold. And I don't know if you've ever seen that cartoon
yeah,
where like the guy's been digging a tunnel and he's
yeah,
digging,
yeah, yeah.
digging.
That's seen it.
And then right at the very end, right about he's just about to hit jackpot, he's like starts turning back.
Yeah,
That's a mindset thing. And
yeah,
so like I think that like mindset coaching is something that like nobody ever talks about. People always talking about like, oh, technical questions, like financial modeling and like all this stuff. Like a lot of times like, it doesn't even matter at all in interviews. And like the mental game in terms of like how strong you have to be
yeah.
mentally, um, that's like more than half the battle.
That's for sure. I know.
So many people just
It's
give up prematurely, and
yeah,
but like they don't have people telling them, they don't have people in their ear telling them like what they really need to be hearing, versus like they just hear like the self-doubt,
yeah,
and that ends up like making the difference, right?
yeah.
um
I would have given up if I was doing it on my own. I would have given it up probably middle of March. I would have been like, all right, nothing's working out. Time to maybe go for a third co-op or do something else.
and you would have given up 1 month before you got all your offers, right?
I know, right? It's so close.
Yeah, so I'm glad you didn't give up. Obviously, super happy that you got the 3 offers. This
Thank
is
you,
a
thank
great
you.
accomplishment, and I'm excited to see what you accomplish, dude. I mean, you
Yeah,
worked super hard for this, and I know you're gonna be successful, even especially with the work ethic that you have. Like I was joking about earlier, but I mean, it's like I think you're ready for the banking hours based on what you've been doing. So,
thank you.
it's
Appreciate
gonna
it.
be easy. Um, so look, guys, like with that said, like for those of you that are still with us, if you're finding yourself in a similar situation, like maybe you go to a non-target school, maybe you don't have as much resources for you on campus, maybe you have a couple friends here and there that are in banking, but like they're super busy and they can only do so much to help you out. And like maybe you've been reading the guides and just memorizing everything, but
Hmm.
it's not clicking. Like whatever it may be, like everybody struggles with different things, but like whatever it may be, like it doesn't have to be that way. Like reach out to us, talk to us, tell us about your situation. Um, what we typically like to do before we decide whether we can work with someone is like, we're going to ask you some questions, learn about what your goals are, what kind of banks you want to get into, want to learn more about your profile, your strengths and weaknesses, and like what you feel like you still need help working on. And then based on that, we'll come up with like a customized game plan for what it is that we think you need to do to be successful, because that the answer to that question is different for every single person, right?
Hmm.
And so like if you want us to kind of come up with this customized game plan for you, then you can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wall stmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. With that said, Rohan, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us today, and just congratulate you again on not
Thank
giving
you.
up and
Thank you. Yeah.
having an amazing outcome. And you know, I mean, you and I already talked before this, like, but we're gonna continue to stay in touch and um for a very long time.
For
And so
sure.
like just don't be a stranger if there's anything else that I can help you with.
Sure. Sounds good. No, appreciate for, everything they've done for me. I mean, couldn't thank you enough. That's for sure.
No, absolutely. It's an honor, man. So, all right, guys, that's going to be it for today. We're going to wrap it up here. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. All right.